For science. I kind of can't believe that I am about to share these stories with you because I've had some seriously embarrassing things happen to me during sex. But there is a reason that I'm going to tell these to you today. First of all, I hope that it will make you feel better about any memories you have that you still feel cringe about whenever you think of. And secondly, I'm going to share the best way to handle embarrassing situations in the bedroom. Because here's the thing about sex. It's messy. It's vulnerable. We're putting the deepest, most private, most personal parts of ourselves out there with another person. It's also an activity in which we can completely lose ourselves. We can let go and release so much tension and emotion and sometimes some other stuff that we would rather not let out with a partner. My point is, if you haven't had something embarrassing happen to you during sex, I hope that it happens soon because life is meant to be lived on the edge. And you know what they say, no risk, no reward. And remember, just because something is embarrassing doesn't mean that it has to have a negative impact on your relationship or your chances with that person or on your self-esteem. If you handle an embarrassing situation with a bit of grace and composure, not only can you move past it quickly, but it can also bring you closer together with your partner. That's sort of like the ironic thing about friction and tension inside of relationships is they can cause us to get closer. So yes, I am about to share with you a list of the most embarrassing things that have happened to me during sex that I remember, and I guarantee a few of them will shock you. But first, let's discuss what to do if something embarrassing happens to you in the bedroom. And by the way, these rules apply whether the embarrassing thing happens to you yourself or the person that you are sleeping with. Knowing how to handle a partner's embarrassment, a woman's embarrassment, putting her at ease after something embarrassing has happened is a big part of being a great lover. Before I dive in, I have to ask, if you aren't subscribed yet, why not? If you want weekly videos on all things sex and relationships, go ahead and join my community by pressing the subscribe button now. Okay, let's get into it. Everything you need to know about handling embarrassing situations like a sex pro. Step 1, expect that it's going to happen. Like I said earlier, if you don't bump into some occasional embarrassment in the bedroom, you or your partners probably aren't really letting loose. It is perfectly normal to experience things like small awkward moments like queefs or farts to situations that are a little more out there. If you are following this channel, if you're subscribed to this content, if you're really going for it, then potentially embarrassing moments are going to happen. And accepting that something may happen and being prepared for it is the best way to get ahead of the situation. As I like to say, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready. Along with simply being aware that these situations are a normal part of sex, it helps to have a few things on hand in your home. Things like towels, wet wipes, even waterproof blankets or mattress covers are always a good idea. Step 2, don't panic. In moments of embarrassment, many of us tend to feel an immediate sense of anxiety and panic. And one of the most important things that you can do in these situations is not let that feeling take over. If you've already followed step 1 and have come to terms with the fact that once in a while you're going to find yourself in a sticky situation, maybe literally, then you're already one big step closer to eliminating the panic response. It's important to remember that the first few moments after an embarrassing incident are the most important. They set the tone for how you're going to handle the whole situation as well as how the other person involved is going to perceive it. So if something embarrassing happens, when something embarrassing happens, take a deep breath and remember it is going to be okay. Avoid, to the degree possible, the urge to freeze or run away. Fight or flight is not what we want here. Try to remember that in the grand scheme of things, sex usually isn't and certainly shouldn't be life or death. Step number 3, name the situation immediately. Instead of freezing or panicking, what you should do is verbally address the situation right away. Now look, there are small embarrassing things that you can just brush off without addressing them. You don't have to name every queef and be like, that might have been embarrassing for you. If it's the kind of thing where you can just continue having sex, it doesn't require a check-in, then go ahead and do that. But if it is something that is substantial enough that it takes you both out of the moment, or something that like stops sex entirely, then you definitely want to address it. I recommend doing that directly, but in a lighthearted way. The key is not to make a huge thing of it. I mean, treat it with respect, but it's not like a grave situation. Whenever something embarrassing happens during sex, your internal mantra ought to be, this is normal, this is human, this happens to the best of us. The way you address this situation should be in line with this sentiment. I remember when a partner of mine stopped what he was doing to me and said, I don't want you to be concerned, but there is a bit of blood. Very grounded, very crisp and clear delivery of that line. It turned out that I had actually sustained a bit of an injury, but the way that he brought it up so calmly and directly set the tone for how I was able to deal with the situation. Which brings me to step number 4, addressing the situation. Now that it's out in the open and you've both acknowledged calmly that something has happened, it's time to do something about it. Depending on the situation itself, addressing it might look like cleaning up. It could look like changing the sheets, grabbing a towel. If there's an injury, it probably looks like making sure that the injured person has everything that they need to care for themselves, or calling for help, even 911 and an ambulance, if you are in a really intense situation. But it often looks like a conversation. I was with a guy once who could not get it up on our first date. He had had a bit to drink, and rather than being awkward about it, he just told me straight up that he was a little tipsy and tired from a long day. He said it doesn't happen a lot, once in a while when he's either really exhausted or nervous, and drinking doesn't help. He told me how into it he was, how into me he was, and asked if I would be comfortable fooling around in other ways, which I was totally down with. The most important part is to try to remain grounded, calm, connected to your partner while you're addressing it. So whether it's a physical cleanup or an emotional cleanup, staying grounded in yourself and in tune with your partner is always going to make things less awkward. Which brings me to step 5. Reset. After the situation has been dealt with, it is important that you come back together and reset the experience. Now, this can mean a lot of things. If you've followed my other steps and you've dealt with the incident in an open, direct, panic-free way, this should be fairly easy. Check in with yourself and figure out how you want to proceed, and then check in with your partner and how they want to proceed. Do the two of you want to continue fooling around? Do you want to take a step back and cuddle, or just talk in bed? There should never be any pressure to finish the sex that you were having before, and you definitely don't have to continue having sex in order to save the situation or the evening. Shifting gears to something else might be just what you need in order to reconnect, which can get you back into the swing of intimacy that you were experiencing before the embarrassing thing happened, whether you then have sex again or not. And finally, step 6, and I love this one in particular, focus on the positive. The kind of cool thing about an embarrassing incident that happens during sex is that it has a pretty amazing ability to bring you closer together if you handle it in the right way. If no one is seriously hurt, it is always nice to approach the situation with a bit of humor. Be sure to validate your partner's experience as well, but take a moment to recognize how cool it is that you both were able to take it in stride. Now, of course, for some folks who are having a super negative reaction to being embarrassed, you don't want to be seen as poking fun at them, but it is nice to inject some levity into the situation, maybe even if that means poking gentle fun at yourself. And of course, it is always good to reflect on what you've learned. What are we taking from this situation that we can use in the future? Sometimes when embarrassing things happen, it's because we push things a little bit too far past our limits. Taking note of how things went too far is great information for future encounters. As shitty as it can feel in the moment, embarrassing situations humanize us to our partners and vice versa. They are a great opportunity to foster more intimacy and connection in your dynamic. And I will prove that now by sharing with you my many moments of truth. Embarrassing things that have happened to me personally during sex. I'm just gonna list these off. I have lit someone's hair on fire during sex. I have passed out, fully lost consciousness, often from pleasure and having good experiences, but I also faint very easily. So any amount of pain can knock me out. I have peed on a couch. I have pooped on a bed. I have thrown up eggnog all over a person. That is true. I have had a fingernail puncture the tip of my partner's penis. That one was particularly not fun. I have gotten period blood all over a wall. I have tried to fit something that was too big inside of me and caused an injury to my vaginal opening. That was also not fun. I have literally torn a hamstring. Also not fun. Maybe not even embarrassing. That didn't hurt until the next day. And potentially the most embarrassing, and I hope that this remains my most embarrassing. I hope that I've passed the peak, but I once gave a partner a massage which ended in me rimming him for the very first time, only to realize that he had fallen asleep. You know what? I survived all of them and many more that I didn't name here. If you ever find yourself in an embarrassing sexual situation, just remember the 6 steps and feel free to think to yourself that it is probably not as bad as what has happened to Caitlin. I'm Caitlin V. Thank you for watching and subscribing. I will see you here next time. Bye-bye. Please no one send this to any of my exes. They don't need to know that I talked about this on the internet. Although I'm sure they remember all of those. Every other person that was involved with all of those things definitely remembers it.